Boom, we are on. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I hope you're all well. While I take a sip out of my little Superman cup, if you're watching this on the video. We actually just got a coffee maker during lockdown. And if you're anyone like me and you love coffee, I definitely advise it. The Breville ones where you actually put it in, it grinds the coffee, the whole experience. I definitely advise that. But at the same time, because we're in lockdown, we didn't want to take obviously too much business away from the cafes where we're spending all the money. So we tried to buy the good beans from the local cafes. But yes, in terms of time efficiency, which we're going to talk about today, I definitely recommend that. And yes, you would see that if you're watching it on video, which I obviously post this on my YouTube channel. Not recommended to just watch me on video, but my YouTube channel has some good videos on that. So go over to that. Sean McGuinness, which is my name, so that's the one on that. But today's podcast, I'm excited to talk about this topic. It's very, very overlooked. Again, ironically, we hear a lot of statements being thrown around that of what we need the outcome to look like, but there's very little in the way of like the stuff in between. You're like, all right, I know I need to get a calorie deficit. Hopefully I've established at this stage. Hopefully I'm not. I don't think there's any people that don't agree with me listening to this podcast. There are some people out there like that, unfortunately, still, but we're humans. This is going to be people believing mad stuff. That's just a part of life. But for those of you who know, that's how you lose fat effectively. Good, okay, we've established that. But the problem is, as I said, the bits in between. So how am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to implement that? Because the main reason human beings in the Western world are fat, and I was actually fat, out of shape, unhealthy. I was watching Gordon Ramsay. I love Gordon Ramsay. He has a new series on things on National Geographic. Louise bought a subscription to the Disney Channel because she wanted to watch all the cartoons, and obviously Disney own the whole world as well, so they have the National Geographic on that. But he was going around to different countries, and last night we watched 2 episodes. Last night he was in Norway, and New Zealand or something, one of the other Scandinavian countries. But basically where he was, they were farming all the food, okay, were burning lots of calories all day, and they were cooking whole foods, okay. Again, not going to be here to state the obvious, but the environment we're in today is one which is set up for us to be overweight, okay. That's just a matter of fact. And then if we just go around screaming at people, oh, well, you just need to eat less calories, you just need to be in a calorie deficit. Yeah, okay, cool. But the problem is a whole environment set up to make us fail. So at some point, we're going to fail. This is not to say you shouldn't try to lose fat, but we're going to look at how we can make our environment help us lose fat. Because nobody talks about that. It's human beings. We're very social creatures. So whatever everyone's usually doing socially, we're gonna follow. Peer pressure is a real thing, and we don't like to be the odd one out. So if our environment, and when I say environment, I'm talking about people, external people as well, family, friends, whatever. Within that environment, are all doing a thing, and we're trying to lose fat and they're doing the opposite, it's going to be very hard. In terms of food, like we've alluded to, actually, where I did a video with George on my YouTube channel, the food in our environment, one of the reasons we're out of shape and overweight, is because that food is just overly tasty. It's made in a way, just as I've said before, it hijacks kind of the reward centers of our brain. which then we can't control our appetite and we overeat. And it's nothing to do with you being lacking self-control or lacking self-discipline. It's just your brain's set up a certain way. And if you can picture, like, the people that make food have this like little cheat code that they know can get just us to overeat. It's like a little they know the manual. They've read the manual of what human beings do, and they go, well, if we do this and this, we know this is going to happen. And that's just what happens. I was listening to Andrew Huberman, his podcast, and he had Anna Lembecke, I think that's how you pronounce her, and she's a professor in neuroscience. I think she was in The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen that on Netflix, it's brilliant. But she's basically said human beings are made to kind of be addictive to things, the reward parts of our brain. And again, from an evolutionary reason, if we look back in the food environment we evolved in, that served us well. That got, luckily we're here today and you listen to this because of that mechanisms. If it got to food, I was like, meh. Well, you wouldn't be I wouldn't be recording this podcast, and fuck, I don't know, apes would probably run the world. Well, I suppose we're descendants of apes, but yeah, I don't know. Someone would be at this stage. Maybe like fucking, they have bean chickens over here, so I don't know. But that's it. Our default setting is being hijacked and taken advantage of. Okay. In addition, our obese environment is made for us in a way the opposite to what Gordon Ramsay was visiting all these people, where they're making the food and all the manual labour and the calories burned involved in that manual labour. Well, unfortunately, we're sitting down, and you can look at like sociological reasons of capitalism, sitting down, and it's kind of good in a way that we're not starving to death, but that's just like that's just the trade-off we get. So all is not lost. What we're going to talk about today is what we can do to create an environment that actually helps us lose fat. Funny enough, when people think of, I was trying to think about this today, why we don't make it easier for ourselves. Actually, there's a guy who I was listening to as well to try to get some tips. I came across him. What was his name? And he wrote the book Slim by Design. And his name is Brian Wansink. And he is a professor of psychology at Cornell University. And he's a book Slim by Design. And he has a few. He talks about your house, your workplace, and he goes, is it making it heavy? Is your house making you heavy? Or is it making you healthy? And he said, he trying to talk about how we need to set up our environment in a way that makes it effortlessly, why can't I say that word? Effortlessly easy, for us to lose fat. And I was thinking about, why don't we do that? I think we have it in our head, and we're going to talk about self-control. We have in our head that when we're trying to lose fat, we need to exert all this discipline and self-control, and in a sense, like, make ourselves suffer, or if we look at temptations, when we think we need to elicit self-control on every temptation in our environment, and the more we're doing that, I don't know if it confirms that we're doing well, because we're like, yeah, I said no to that cookie. Yeah, said no to that. Said no to that. Said no to that. But as you can all attest to, that only works so long, because if you're just doing it all the time, and people have different theories about willpower and willpower battery, but what we do know is that at some point you're going to fail, because our environment is just set up way too much, kind of pissing against the wind, trying to do that. So our whole goal is to make losing fat effortlessly easy. Excuse me, fucking Tourette's. And that is a goal. So if we envision you're in the jungle, all right, and there's no road tracked out. So we're walking through, Okay, and it's very hard. We're getting caught. We're falling down into lakes, and we're getting caught in all the grass and there's insects. It's just very hard. So the likelihood of us getting to the other side is going to be much lower. We might fall somewhere. We have to exert so much force to get to the other side that at some point we're probably going to fail. Versus, we come in, we get a little tractor, we carve out a nice road. We might even come in then, we might get some tarmac. Just don't hire the travellers to do that because they probably rip you off. We get some nice tarmac there. We might even put some lights along the road. We might even, cage the road off. So all the mad animals don't come on. We might put some signposts up. And as that road begins to wear away, we constantly keep getting the construction workers on and keeping that road in pristine state. So what we can then do is we don't even have to walk. We can jump in a car and effortlessly drive to the other side. Perfect. And that's essentially how I look at engineering someone's environment. We never think how to make it easy for ourselves as a way of getting to our goal. We just think we need to get in there and rough it and make it hard. That's only going to get you so far. If we actually think of like successful fat loss, it's a very long time. Okay, sorry to burst your bubble, but if I look at very life-changing clients that I've trained, most of the transformations, as I said before, I'll put up are either from people who have trained before and have great habits in place, or a lot of time it's hard because I'm increasing that person's likelihood, in most cases, to some there's not, that they're going to revert back to normal because maybe they've gone too strict. But if I look at slow, gradual behavior change, it's a long time. And then maintaining that, well, guess what? There's no finish line. So we need to keep that road in pristine state the whole time. Because if we start to go back and away from the habits that got us there, well, suddenly we're starting that environment in the safari starting to creep back in on the road, and then suddenly the road's covered again. So what can we do with that? So first of all, we talked about the food environment is set up in a way, in combination with it being overly tasty, hyper palatable, it's too accessible. And there's a theory, and a guy, the book here, I'll always point this book out, The Hungry Brain by Dr. Stefan Guillemin. And he's a neuroscientist, and his theories come from the evolutionary background of how we've evolved, which makes sense. And one of them is called the cost of food, and the fact that if you have food very accessible, your brain's going to increase the dopamine, and dopamine's involved in behavior or pleasure seeking. It's going to increase dopamine, and it's going to increase motivation for you to go and get it. So if it knows there's some ice cream in the freezer and that ice cream is 1,000 calories, it knows, well, the cost of me getting the ice cream is very low. I only have to expend 2 calories to go off the couch to get a massive return of calories. Brilliant. In terms of your hungry brain, or your starving brain, which is what we've evolved, kind of like that Labrador brain where we just want to eat all the time, that's a brilliant win in terms of your brain's like behavioral economics. Versus if we have to expend a lot of calories to go down the road, our dopamine is going to be lower, so our motivation is going to be lower. So the fact that food's there, even if whether we're hungry or not, is going to change whether we eat that, which makes it crazy different. So food accessibility is the second biggest thing we need to look at. So in terms of behavior change, what we trying to do, we were trying to add friction between the habits we're trying to do less of. Okay, which means we know in a fat loss plan, unless you're really, really, really heavy, we can't just fill our calories with highly processed, overly tasty food, because they dysregulate our appetite. So we don't know how to stop, and we'll just keep eating and keep eating and keep eating. Even if we've tracked the calories you get your hands on a tub of ice cream, you're putting the likelihood up that you're going to overeat, because, as I said, that surge in dopamine overrides the appetite signals of leptin, ghrelin, CCK, all these fullness and hunger signals to your brain, and we just keep eating for hedonic, for pleasurable reasons. This is not to say we can never have these foods. I'm going to talk about how we can actually have them, and strategies we can still have them and enjoy ourselves, because again, we don't want to be too rigid in our plan, but we just want to add enough what's called friction in there between those habits to make it harder for yourself to get it. And the likelihood's going to go down, because you're going to have to exert a bit of effort if you really want it. But sometimes if the food's just there, you're just going to eat it, and what's the point? You're not even hungry, and now you just blown out all your calories, or even maybe wasted your whole week's calories just because the food was there. And you'd be like, for fuck's sake, I didn't even enjoy that. I just had it because it was there. If we really want the food, we're going to have it because we enjoy it, and then we're going to save it, blah, 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 blah. But not just because it's there. So, when I coach someone, first thing we do like a little food audit of their home environment first of all. And we might talk about, in most cases, I know most people can't control themselves really around very overly tasty food, and we're going to eat and preference it intuitively. There may be 1 in 10, I don't know, out there that can have the food, maybe make it a bit harder for themselves to get it. I put in the top of the cupboard, or put it somewhere a bit harder, less accessible, and that they can have that in the house. There may be differences around different foods, where one food is definitely not, where maybe you can have something else. Like if we're talking in terms of chocolate, maybe you can definitely never have Cadbury's chocolate in your house, because if it's there, you're going to scoff it. Well, maybe you could have, a little bit darker version. So there's always it's along a spectrum when I talk about this. But in general, we don't want high calorie food to be accessible in a home environment. It gets a little bit harder if you have kids or partners or housemates or friends that you live with, but we're going to talk about strategies with that as well. So, but just first take a minute and go, okay, is there foods there just for the sake of it? Do I have a track record of maybe eating these foods? And most people will. And don't judge yourself of the times where maybe it's less stressful, maybe you're not working as hard, because think back to the times where maybe you actually did get derailed. Were you stressed? Were you hungry? Were you tired? The likelihood of you making a bad decision in combination with you eating for pleasurable reasons to emotionally get over the stress, that's going to increase as well. So don't just think back maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Have a look at your whole journey. When I get someone in, I'm going to look at that whole journey, what's slipped them up in the past. And when they say, well, I just lack self-control. Okay, yeah, cool. You lack self-control with the ice cream at home, but who bought the ice cream? Was it there? Yeah, it was there. Okay, well, maybe if you don't have the ice cream, we don't have to exhibit self-control to get it. And that brings me on to my next point. People think you need lots of self-control, when in fact, if we look at people that are very successful, and I think of my clients, especially whose life-changing transformations, they keep these habits in check, they just know themselves better to not keep these foods around. So most people overestimate their self-control. Okay, and we know that. Think of the times you have said, or you might have heard someone say, I'll just go down to the pub for a drink. Next minute you're coming home 4 a.m. with fucking McDonald's all over your t-shirt, and you, what was I doing? And then you start to feel guilty and shame. So just be aware, in times, especially when you're stressed, you're tired, logic goes down the drain, your emotional reasons go up. And the same when we're out, when we're out with friends, we get stuck in the moment, and that high energy environment takes over. So it's the same way. So it'd be like some alcoholic trying to give up a drink, and they go, well, now in the AA meeting, if you can just give me a bit more self-control, and then I can go in the pub and I can try to say no to drinking. which hasn't worked for the last 10 years. And the person goes, well, how about you just don't go in the pub? And then you don't have to exhibit self-control. And it's definitely true for people starting their journey, because if we have so much context and triggers and behavioural triggers around a home environment where we might associate with this pleasurable food, and then all these associations. So when you break people's behaviours down, it could be a case that every time they watch TV, they crave the ice cream. So they sit down and then we have the ice cream. Or it could be we have a cup of tea, we have the chocolate. Where we had hard day's work, we crack open the bottle of wine. We have all these associations. So if we just get rid of them completely, it's like when you're on holiday. It's probably a bit easier when you're on holiday because you don't have any built up behaviours. Same way with all these like Biggest Losers, well, many reasons why that's just a waste of time, because they're not in the home environment. Yes, you can get someone and clean them up, but you haven't. That once they get back to their own environment, whether it's rehab or Biggest Loser or whatever, they're just going to fall back in because their environment's set up in a way that triggers them for all these old behaviours. If you live with people, whether it's partners, and I'm going to keep saying this, if you heard me repeat myself, get used to someone to say it all the time in the future because nobody listens. And this works. A lockbox. And I actually looked on Amazon the other day and they sell them now, food lock boxes. I should have painted it, but you don't have to buy it, and it's probably don't advise buying from Amazon anyway. So if some other company could just come up and get good at delivering stuff so quick, I wouldn't have to contribute to Mr. Bezos taking advantage of millions of people. But yes. So what we did, went down to Bunnings, which is a local like hardware store, got a box, got a lock, and then if I have food, because my calorie deficit is bigger, which again a lot of girls and guys go out to eat and then you split the food, where you're like, well, you might be 30 kilos less than your boyfriend or your partner, significant other. The same way with food in the house. Don't see. He might have a bigger calorie allowance, so he can bring home maybe a little bit extra of these things, and that fits his day. So if I do that and that fits my day, well, I'm not going to leave it out because Louise is just going to eat it. Again, which her brain's primed to, so I'm going to put this in the box, and she might go, hey, what's the code for that box, when she's a bit tired or something. I say, nah, you're not allowed. Oh, I don't know, forgot the code. And this stuff is actually heightened when we're in a calorie deficit. Again, makes sense. If you're starving or you're on a diet or your brain perceives you as starving, when we eat these high calorie foods, you actually get a massive dopamine release. I forget the name of this hypothesis Dr. Mike Israel talks about, which again makes sense because then you're going to overeat more in it to get you back to baseline, and then increase your chance of failure. So take this food completely out. If you have housemates there where it might be a bit more awkward, and we're going to touch on other people, our friends and family that have a big influence on us, well then you need to have a sit down with them, whether it's your partner, whether it's your flatmates, whoever it is, and say, look, this is what I'm doing, this is the effect when we leave foods out, can you make this a little bit harder, hide this on me please, blah blah blah. I failed so many times before in this fat loss, I'm putting all this energy in, and I don't want to have to go through the whole day of being prepared and training, get my steps in, only to come home and then ruin my whole day's deficit because you've left some cookies out and now I'm going to eat them. Yes, I'm all for responsibility and taking responsibility, but we need to read the manual on how our brain is primed. Otherwise, well, it's not really common sense if we don't, is it? It's kind of like just fixing a car because, oh, I think it's this way. No, read the manual, how designed and primed, and let's work around that. Let's look at why we get fat in the first place and then do the opposite. That makes sense. In contrast to that, then what we're going to do is look at we've made it harder to get the foods that are way too accessible or completely take them out of environment. And one thing I didn't touch on there was alcohol. Same thing. If you find you're coming home having the glass will lead to some more calories, another glass, you've blown your deficit out. Well, either there's a spectrum in how hard you make it. You either take it out completely, you get someone to hide it, you put it somewhere, you have to get a ladder to get up to it. How hard can you make that to really deter you? And they've seen, even if you just make it a little bit hard, that's going to massively decrease the likelihood of doing that. I can attest to when I have the assault bike on the balcony versus down in the garage. When it's on the balcony, I don't know what percentage is, but the amount of times I go on it just because it's on the balcony versus I'm like, oh, I have to go downstairs. Nah, forget it. It's actually ridiculous. And they've seen this. Brian Winsink, that's his name, Slim by Design, talks about this. It's only really stuff that deters people, and that makes a massive difference. So the same thing again. At least if you're the person that could keep maybe some foods around, what we do need to look at and brings on the next point is what's in eye view, especially what's in eye view around your kitchen. Again, people will leave chocolates, they'll leave alcohol in eye view, plain view, and that's what you're going to preference over what's not in plain view. They've seen even people the study where they had popcorn with arm's length versus apples, and whichever way they set up, when they had the apples at arm's length versus the popcorn a little bit away, they ate more apples, and when they had the popcorn at arm's length versus the apples, they ate more popcorn. So the eye view and what's in plain view then becomes very critical. So then we say, okay, the foods we're trying to eat more of, which is the lower calorie, quote unquote healthy, whole foods, nutritious foods, the foods that aren't made to massively increase dopamine, they fill us up, we eat them slowly, naturally, and they keep us full for long periods of time, they regulate our appetite very well, which is why for some people they could just eat whole foods and that will naturally put them in a deficit because it regulates your appetite. Those foods need to be in plain view and they need to be very accessible. So people go, how can I eat more protein? The first thing is you buy more protein for your house, and then you need to have a plan A, plan B, and plan C. So you might have some, this is obviously if you cook most of your meals at home, or even one meal, all makes a difference. You might have some chicken in the fridge. Going on from that, you might have like some chicken marinated in the fridge. That's your plan A, okay? Plan B, you might have some cans of tuna and just in the cupboard. And then, I don't know, plan C, you might have like one of my Muscle Chef meals, ready prepared meals in the freezer. Plan A, so when you get hungry, there's no chicken, I've eaten a lot of tuna, bang, have the meal. And so when you do that, you're massively increase the likelihood you're going to eat those foods, obviously. Because when we get hungry, we're going to make a bad decision, bang, just eat the meal, and then I'm good again. I have for that same reason. And the same goes for veggies, fruits. So, people, really need to eat more fruit. Okay, first thing, buy some fruit, get a fruit bowl, just put it on the counter. And let's see how much more fruit you eat then. Same with vitamins. People, I always forget to take my vitamins. Yeah, because they're in the back of the cupboard. Put them out where you can see them, what you do every day. Put them beside where you brush your teeth. You're more likely to have it. They have to be in plain view. Same goes for veggies. For some people that have the time, you might either buy pre-made salads and just keep that there. You may then, as like a plan B, have frozen veggies in the freezer, frozen fruits in the freezer. You might have the time to be able to prepare a nice little salad that lasts you for a few days or for the week. So you come in, then you might have some good sources of carbs. So I always keep little packets of brown rice. Things are 100 grams that they take 90 seconds in the microwave, bang. And then if I need to, always have some spinach in the fridge. Okay, there's nothing in the house. I know I have tuna. It's 2 cans of tuna. Bang that in. I'm going to have that with brown rice. I'm going to have that with some spinach. Put it in a little bowl. A little bit of chili sauce. And Bob's your uncle. There we go. Literally took me 2 minutes to make. In the time where I'm like, oh, I'll just get something on Uber Eats. No. So what we're always doing in environmental design engineering is trying to think the times where we really slip up or it's really hard for ourselves and make sure we can save ourselves in those periods. So look at the times where your quote unquote self-control is at its lowest. What can we do in our environment to make ourselves push ourselves to make a good decision? Same as the road, we're leading ourselves to make a good decision. So we're actually looking ahead of time, engineering our environment in a way that is going to push us towards our goal without us making any conscious decisions or having to make too much, because that's when trouble starts. So there you go. If the stuff we're trying to eat more of, which is the whole foods, proteins, veggies, salads, good carbohydrates, some good fats, make sure you have that in your house in plain view. The accessibility is easy. And again, for this, what we're trying to do is remove the friction. We're trying to remove the difficulty and make it as easy as possible. So when we think, oh, well, I'll just get Uber Eats, you're like, what? Oh, well, that is so easy to make. This, I just have to throw it out in the microwave and just take the brine or oil or water from the tuna. That's only going to take me a second. All right, I'll just do that. That's all we're trying, and then that's a win. So adding and removing friction is what this is called. Touched before about if you really want, what happens if we looked at flexible diet, and which means you can include foods that you enjoy in a small little portion, either each day or each week, or basically in a way that we know it's one processed food isn't going to make us overweight. We know we can fit it into our calories and work it in, but we don't want to do it in a mindless way where we're just eating it because it's there. So what do? It could be at night time, and I'm saying this because sometimes if you actually really want it and you try to deprive yourself too much, well, that can have the opposite effect, because you're mentally deprived now, so then you're actually going to want it more. So you might say to yourself, look, if I really want so-and-so food, I have to go up and try to think what's a reasonable, distance to walk. A 15-minute walk could be. You're like, all right, I'll only get it if I really feel like it. I'll walk 15 minutes to this shop. I'll buy the exact portion of it. No more. And then I'm going to eat. And I know I've accounted for that calories into my plan already. So Lon McDonald, he used the example of, like, he always craves peanut butter when he's on a diet. But obviously he's not going to keep peanut butter in his house. So he knows how much calories you can actually get, like mini portions of peanut butter. The ones you use to like spread on your toast when you're in the buffets. And he knows, right, so he says to himself, right, if I really crave this, I'm going to walk 15 minutes to this shop and I'm going to get 2 of those because I've accounted for those in my calories. Worst case, you buy the small portion, it puts you 100, 200 calories over, takes away that mental deprivement, mental restriction, and then you just adjust the next day 100 calories down and the next day after to balance it all out. And then you've saved yourself a binge, you're happy, and then that's all good. So that's how I do it. Massive mistake I constantly see people make is they go, they'll do that. I'm gonna create feel like a little bit of chocolate. I'll just buy some extra when I feel like it for tomorrow. And then you get home and you polish the whole bar off, and now you're 1,000, 2,000 calories down. Now you've really made a dent on that deficit, which is going to be very hard. I always see that with people. So stop making that mistake, please, for your own sake, because you're putting in all that effort and then you're going to ruin it in one little moment. I'm not saying ruin, obviously flexible diet, you can balance the calories out, but it just means you have to deprive yourself so much for the following days for no reason. Like you didn't actually want it, you only wanted a little bit, and now you've just dug yourself into a hole hard. By the way, been making this coffees with macadamia milk, and it's absolutely delicious. So highly recommend that. Okay, next we want to look at, the last bit of this we want to look at is, we've done a demographic audit of our home environment, and use the same for our work environment as well. Obviously, like if we're in Australia, most people are in lockdown anyway, so they should use this to their advantage. I had clients during the last lockdown that got the best results because it was being out in the environment that was the biggest problem. So use this. You're in control of everything that's in your house, so you have no excuse. You're either going to go two ways. You're either going to go very bad or very good, because if you put bad stuff in, you're going to eat it all, okay? And then if you don't, you're going to go very good, because you're deciding on how much self-control you need to elicit each day. So you can either make it very hard for yourself or very easy. That's your choice. Same goes for work. At your desk, do the same audit. What are the fruit, low calorie snacks, protein snacks if you want it. Get rid of the high calorie stuff. And then for the people around, there's always some dickhead that brings cake in. And you know why? Do you know why they bring cake in? Because they want the cake. They're bringing the cake in to justify to themselves, oh, not everyone wants the cake, so it's okay for me to have it. There's always someone like that, and if there's not, maybe it's you, and you need to sort yourself out. You listen to this. Don't do that. It's synonymous with people. I used to train some of the girl in Nickelodeon office here, and they would joke of the Nickelodeon 10, and it's the 10 kilos you gained when you joined Nickelodeon, because every fucker is bringing palatable food into the office that, first of all, it's very hard to say no to because we're being peer pressured in. And then secondly, once you eat a little bit of it, it's over because it's going to be way too hard to put down. And then thirdly, people are doing it to justify their own actions. And then actually, if you say no, well, now you're making them look bad. You're making them look like a bit of a slob because you've said no and they're eating the cake to themselves. And so they'll peer pressure you more into that. Or same goes with alcohol for drinking. So you need to pull those people aside and you say, look, this goal is important for me. You're stuffing it up. We're going to have problems. Otherwise, you mightn't say that. You might get sent to the HR. Say in a different way. I haven't worked for a company for a few years, as you can tell. So, or you can just send them this episode of podcast. Or send them straight to me. I actually had to get onto a client's significant other before because they were stuffing up all the hard work that we were doing outside of it. And we get home, that person had set up an environment made for the client to fail. So I had to get on to them and sort it out. Didn't go and bash them, I sent them an email and then put a few like explained it properly. So yes, so send them to me if you want. As we've said before, people blame themselves internally when they slip up. They don't take into consideration how big of the environment affects us. So that's first all our physical environment. Now let's look at the other people in that environment. That's our friends, our family, a significant other if we have one, our workmates if we're in work as well. Because fat gain is very contagious. Not in the COVID kind of way, but in the fact that, again, we're social creatures and we do things because other people do them. So, some statistics that I got off that guy Brian from Slim by Design. If one person in the relationship gains fat, then it's 50% likely the other partner will become overweight too. Same goes for friends, okay? For the same reasons. What else? He had a few other ones. He said... Wrong laptop. Hold on a second. Oh, that was it. If you're eating with people who may be overweight, you naturally consume more food with them at a restaurant. And so just take into account that if other people are doing stuff despite what your mom and dad told you to do, we unconsciously copy them. People in our workplace dictate our health behaviour, especially weight gain. Again, good friend gains weight, your chance goes up by, well, he says 56%. And this goes both ways. So if you're gaining weight or losing weight, you are impacting your friends and family either positively or negatively. Again, how your peers around you impacting your behaviour. So have a little think. Are they out of shape? How's their health? How's their behaviours? And how do they have an impact on you? We may need to do the same thing. In fact, just tell them about our goals. Again, a lot of people are very embarrassed because they might have failed so many times before, so they just keep it on the DL that, they're not losing weight because, hey, if I fail this time, well, they're not going to think anything different of me. So we may need to pull them in and say, look, this is what's happening. Can you please stop offering me food, offering me drinks when I go out? I'm just trying to stay in line. And all these stuff not only down to food behavior, but they've seen alcohol and smoking, especially. I presume all the other ones as well, the other kind of quote unquote addictive behaviors too. So that is that. But some other points on this, you may look at when it comes to your friends or family, and instead of just meeting up, this is something I got from Precision Nutrition actually. They have a great website and blogs, very psychologically science backed. And you go, okay, I want to socialize. Obviously, socializing is one of the best things you can do. We're social animals, but every time I go, it stresses me out. The food wise, we go to these restaurants, don't have good food. I drink too much. I eat too much for no good reason, and then again, I've just ruined my whole 6 days deficit, or put a big dent in it when I didn't need to. Well, what you could say, you go, right, can we socialize in a way where it's not down to food? Or maybe instead of going for a late night drinks, can you go for like a late night, light hot chocolate, or late night tea? Can you do other activities together that don't involve just sitting down, i.e. burning less calories and then over consuming calories? Because most people do that enough anyway. Can you go for bushwalks together? Can you go for hikes? Can you go, cold water swimming's getting pretty popular these days for a good reason. Ironically, when socializing, getting activity in, you won't see the time go, and won't feel like a chore at all. So you get to get your steps in, burn calories, you're not overeating, you're socializing, tick, 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 perfect, brilliant. You might even go and join activities you always wanted and meet friends that way. So you may need to, if your friends are very resistant to this, you may need to carve out your own new friend circle, which naturally happens a lot of the time when people lose weight anyway, ironically enough. It's okay to meet new friends and it will help your goals. So is there a group? Look what activity and hobby you haven't tried before. Jiu-jitsu, when people go, they meet great friends, and then obviously that's a great hobby in terms of our brain, socializing, and then we meet a new crew and maybe a bit more health conscious that way. It could be, I'm just taking rock climbing, I'm just trying to think of things around here. It could be I've seen people take a rollerblading, literally everything's around. There's a thing called Facebook. Google it, get into Facebook, see what's around, and then just take a dive in the deep end and meet new people that way. I think it was James Clear said it. He said, if you're trying to do a new behavior, find a group of people where that new behavior is the norm. Like we said, people don't want to be the outcast. We try to fit in. Look at people dressed the same, we do things the same. Everyone does that, kind of like sheep in a way, except we can use computers. So instead of always standing out in your group, you're not drinking, he never eats, he's always eating salads, or he never eats pizza with us, and feeling like the outcast, maybe you need to find a group where that your behavior is the norm. This used to work very well, where I used to train people individually, but twice or 3 times a week I would specifically do a group training session with all my clients together, and then they would interact, and it would actually positively reinforce a lot of stuff I would tell them, but it would increase the effectiveness of it, because suddenly there's a group of people talking about tracking calories, talking about different recipes, talking about their training session, talking about the results, encouraging you to get results, telling you different ways you can lean your foods out, whatever it is. And then that became a social circle in itself, because I was aware of this phenomenon, but I actually wasn't aware how well it would work. So suddenly they're positive reinforcing each other, training hard and food wise, and losing weight, and supporting each other on their goals. And then after the group training, they would go and then have coffee together and socialise. So suddenly they're getting even more of the effects of exercise, because socialising is one of the biggest things for our brain health, and why so many people are struggling with lockdown now. It is why group training does very well. Like, a lot of the time I used to see, in terms of an optimal science, I would look at group training in the gym and I go, fuck, the technique's brutal. What are they doing jumping around? They could be out here getting results. But in fact, I would see them after class and they would sit there 15-20 minutes talking, and they'd come in together, have a laugh. So it was more than exercise in a way. It was getting such these net benefits that maybe cross out how well they're moving in the class. So there's a trade-off in a sense with that. So if you want to become healthy, find a group where health is the norm. Some other noticeable ways I'll finish off that you can improve your environment, your engineering of your environment. And it's just looking at habits you may struggle with and just make it very hard for you to do the habit. If you always come home, and there's a reason all these apps make it so easy to you to click on, they're trying to, everything apps do and social media do, they do to remove friction. Where suddenly it was 3 clicks to get somewhere, now it's 1. The same way when you go on to the best sites, I talked about Amazon before, there's a neuroscience in them removing friction. How can we make those 3 clicks to check out, suddenly it's 1, where your card's on file, bang, let's remove the friction, let's make it as easy as possible. There is a whole science to psychology of consumer behavior and marketing. It's absolutely fascinating. I love it. And it's the same way, these marketers, the same way as the food scientists, they know like how our brain ticks. They know how we work. So in terms of setting up supermarkets where we may completely overlook how that environment is engineered, it is engineered to a T, and constantly re-engineered depending on like statistics and stuff. So I always have one of my good clients saying, we always have real good conversation about this. So if they know, and they look, obviously the statistics in today's age are absolutely next level. People always eat this. Well, they know they eat whatever, we said peanut butter. They always eat the peanut butter beside the jelly. So they specifically place all these things beside each other. They have things on special here hanging up. They have 2 for 1 on this, because they know we're just going to consume both of the things and come back for more. We don't actually consume them individually. All these, like, taking advantage of all these cognitive biases that we have. So the way they set that out is, it's a science. Even so much as the music, when it's peak time, there's fast music on. When it's off peak, there's slow music on. And even as much as one of my clients, when we talked about this, Courtney, who's in retail, she said even so much that when they were closing, they would play that song, it's closing time. You wouldn't even know, but subconsciously we are just walking in there, and that is a science marketer's dream, that they are just guiding us wherever we want and just totally influencing our consumer behavior. Think of how think of that compared to like Aldi, where they just throw the stuff in the aisles, and think of, you probably buy way less stuff there because it's less thought of how they put it out. They're just chucking it out in the box. Sometimes you have to unwrap it and get it out. It's just even as I talk, I'm thinking of how, like, it's way less stimulating. Special stuff falling off the roof in Coles and Woolworths, which have made things. Tesco's over there. The Easter eggs, Easter's coming up, and they have this big Easter bunny there, and all this stuff where we're going to check out, those impulse buys. They know what we're doing with tea, and we just walk into the hands. Same way with social media. As I said, if you haven't, go watch the Social Media Dilemma. It's made me completely really try wean myself off that phone. So what did I do when I'm trying to get off social media? When I'm so ingrained that if I do a post, my brain knows when I'm uncomfortable or when I'm stressed, that all I have to do is pick up this phone, look at my notifications. I'm going to get some likes, and it's all going to be better. My brain's going to get a nice little flood of dopamine, and then after a while I'm picking up that phone unconsciously because I want some dopamine, like the rat pressing the cocaine triggers, and they actually like just starve to death because they forget to eat and drink water. They're just constantly there pressing the lever all day. Same with this. So I can't use self-control to not go on my phone, but I also can't really leave it in my car because I need to text people and call people for work and stuff. So I put an app blocking software on it between these certain times, so I can't check it in the morning. It's on all day. I can check it once a day, and then I put the app blocking software on. So there's loads of times where I'll subconsciously click on it to go on the app. It's blocked, and I'm like, oh, okay, oh yeah, sorry, just put it away. Now I've weaned myself off it so much that I only go on Instagram when I'm on my laptop. So I've completely, it's taken a few weeks because if you listen to Anna Limbeck, it takes when you're constantly hitting those pleasure centers, whether that's food or when that's any kind, quote addictive behavior that hits the pleasure centers, you start to lose some of those dopamine receptors because you're flooding your brain too much. So it needs to balance out because it's getting too much dopamine. So it actually degenerates some of the receptors. But then what's that mean? It actually means you get less pleasure in life because you lost a few of those dopamine receptors. Which, there's no point looking good for Instagram if you're miserable in real life, and it's actually making you depression. And from an anecdotal point of view, I feel completely different brain-wise and concentration-wise after not going on. It's actually ridiculous. So limit yourself, limit the people you put on there. I've muted a lot of people. The only people I see is a handful of people that are very, very smart that either make me laugh, thought evoking stuff, or give me really good information. So do that. Before I interrupt myself, some other noticeable ways to engineer your environment: take Uber Eats off your phone. That's what I was saying about apps. They remove friction on purpose. So they have your card details saved. You click on, here's what you last ordered. So it's literally one click for you to order what you ordered last time. The friction is so little. Versus if you don't have food at home, well, now you have to go over to the shop, and now you have suddenly a lot of friction between the habit you're trying to do, and you have no friction between the habit you're trying not to do. So what do you think is going to happen there? So take Uber Eats off your phone. This is even for people that get caught watching TV. I can't remember who got this off. If we look at environment, it's made to influence us, and ironically, we create a terrible environment that massively influences us and leaves us miserable. It's pretty ironic. Like we're putting our environment in a way that goes against our whole goals and way of living. So if we look at us getting lazy when we sit down at night or whenever, if you're in lockdown, you're in there all day, think about your lounge room, your sitting room. Now have a think what way your sitting room or lounge room is designed. where is the furniture pointing? It's pointing at the TV. What do you think you're going to do? You're going to sit down, you're going to watch TV, because your environment is guiding you to do what is set up. Again, if someone was trying to work out more and watch TV less, what do you think they should probably do? They should probably not get rid of the TV, but maybe put the TV in the cupboard, and then engineer your lounge room, your sitting room, with the yoga mat out, with your weights there, guide you to make the decision you're trying to do. Stop trying to do against it. In regards to the TV, if you do then want to watch TV, pull it out. But in regards to Netflix, again, they remove friction completely. These all have the best neuroscientists and psychologists working for them. They have automatic play already on. So one thing finishes, leaves you on a cliffhanger. Oh, just watch a bit of the next one. Bang. And then suddenly you watch the whole series. It's 3 a.m. You're not going to sleep. And then you've stuffed up your whole week. So your body clock's off. So turn the automatic play off Netflix if you watch that or any of those series. Turn the notifications off your phone in general for your apps, actually. I've done that. Especially like your significant others. That will massively reduce your stress. As much as we think we have free will, we are all really just a product of our environment. If you hear depressing news all day, and Robert Sapolsky says this, if you hear depressing news all day, you're probably going to be very pessimistic about life. Same goes for your physical environment. So watch what's coming in, watch your environment, and put it in a way that makes you a better person. So lastly, think about how you can add friction to the habits you're trying to do less of, or maybe some of them you didn't even know. And how can you remove friction for the habits you're trying to do less of? So basically, behavior change. How can you make the behaviors you're trying to do less of harder to do, and how can you try to make the ones you're trying to do more of easier to do? That is for you to have a look. So there you go. That is just a snippet of that, what you need to know about our environment. Hopefully that opened up your eyes a little bit better. It's definitely not talked about enough, but slowly we're getting there. So is your environment making you heavy or making you healthy? Have a look. How can you engineer it in a way to make this as effortless as possible? Stop trying to willpower your way to the result, because fat loss is a long process and you're going to fail. And even if you do lose fat, if you go away from the habits and engineering your environment in a way that got you there, you're just going to go straight back to the beginning. So don't put all the effort in if it's going to do it. So look especially at the people you're trying to kind of emulate. You're trying to get lean. Or look at lean people. Look at their habits. A lot of the time they're going to do this subconsciously anyway. So that's why probably maybe there's not many people giving tips about it. That in combination with a lot of dumb people giving advice, the Dunning-Kruger effect. But there you go. So I know you know millions of people. No, not millions of people. I know you know lots of people that need to hear this. And hopefully by everyone sharing this, that makes up to maybe millions of people. And then we get millions of healthier, happier people. And this information gets known more. And then we can stop buying into dumb, silly plans that sells us very short-term solutions, wasting our time, money, and effort. Let's use the science of psychology. Let's use how the manual for human beings. If the manual for females is out there, please send it my way. But other than that, we will leave you on that. And I will see you on next episode. Please like, share, do all that good stuff. Let's get these ratings up. And yes, see you next week, same time.